Kia ora, iti whānau, and welcome to a Kōrero Live. This is our special edition of a Yarn Live, which is a series that we do of interviewing amazing people and hearing their amazing stories. And a Kōrero Live, as you might have guessed by that word in the middle, changing a yarn to a kōrero, is a specific story of someone's background who happens to be Māori. And I'm just going to share a little bit before we get DonnaMaree to introduce herself. The background of a Kōrero Live started with the 2020 Te Wiki o Te Reo Māori, or Māori Language Week, when I interviewed 35, which turned into 37 Māori leaders about their story with Te Reo specifically, because I ran into new Kiwis and Kiwis alike that had no idea about the real reason why a lot of Māori weren't able to speak Te Reo. And of course, since then, with I think 2 more Te Wiki o Te Reo Māori, people now got quite a good understanding of the history of the, the colonization of New Zealand, and how the language was treated and how it was almost eradicated by practices from the government, and hence there are generations that weren't taught it. And that was what it was all about, to educate it, because I was not sick of it, but I was almost, every time I go to a barbecue and someone who's a new Kiwi goes, "Oh, why do we need to learn Māori at schools? Māori don't even speak Māori. They don't care. Why should we?" And it's like, oh my goodness, you know. So that was what it was about. And then like all these things, DonnaMaree, it's a matter of, we can't just do it for a day or a week of the year. We've got to carry it on. So I actually intended to do this regularly and get people on, get even the speakers back and keep it going. But of course, with life things, whatever, the regularity dropped down. So I want to put a stake in the ground for doing it monthly. I think the original stake in the ground was fortnightly, and was just too much. So let's go monthly. And you are the first person to reignite a Kōrero Live. So with that, I'd like to welcome you on and invite you to introduce yourself. And this is AFQY styles, where we meet the person, not the suit. And we'll talk about the business and how they all wrap together in a moment.
Oh, sure. My name's DonnaMaree Ryder, and I'm the CEO of Tania.ai I, the co-founder. We started her a couple of years ago. Have a background, a couple of degrees in finance. Absolutely loved my corporate career, but then decided I wanted to give back. So started to stand up Tania.ai.
Awesome. So let's hear a little bit about you as a person. We'll come to the detail of work. And, you know, I met one of the little ones just a moment ago. So who are you outside of the workplace? Because we're going to cover the corporate and the startup, but who are you outside of work?
Yeah, sure. Mum and a wife. I have 4 children. They are Tania, who's actually my mum's namesake. She's 14. My son, Dre, who is 12. I have a 10-year-old Marshall and then a 5-year-old Christine. So 4 beautiful children. My husband is Clayton Pakinga, and we have a crazy household. Very busy. We both work, and I work as well as I do contract work as well as standing up our startup. But it's a pretty crazy place, and we have 2 teens, which someone needs to write a book. I need like an app that says you will survive.
You will survive 2 teens.
Yeah.
I was going to say, so the oldest daughter is Tanya and the oldest son is Dre. I can imagine that's something to do with music. For the inspiration. Yeah.
Well, I have a pretty funny story actually. My husband and I agreed that with the first boy and girl, he'd name the first boy, I'd name the first girl. So I named her Tania, and he named her Dre because he enjoys rap and R&B. So second boy came along, which was Marshall. He said to me, I said, I don't know what I'm going to call him. And he goes, why don't you call him Marshall? We were watching League at the time, like after Benji Marshall. And I thought, Benji Marshall, I was like, oh, yeah, Benji Marshall's pretty cool. Yeah, that sounds cool, babe. We'll call him Marshall. And then I go out for lunch. I'm about to have Marshall. We're about a month out. And my friend goes to me, oh, so what are you going to name Bubba? And I said, oh, his name's Marshall. And she goes, do you want 2 rappers? And I went, what? 2 rappers? What do you mean? And she said, well, Marshall Mathers. And I was like, oh.
Eminem. Yeah.
So I go home, I walk inside and I said to my husband, Marshall Mathers, and he goes, "Oh my gosh, who told you?" Like he knew I wouldn't know. So that was one up on him. He had fun with that, but yes, we have 2 rappers in the family. They're all very talented. Our kids love playing basketball, netball, volleyball. The little kids, kind of anything. Yeah.
We can't leave the youngest one out.
Christine.
What happened with the 4th name?
Oh, she's actually named after one of her nannies. Her nanny, Christine, who's actually used to live in Australia, but now lives down south. So she's named after her nan. Yeah. So actually our first daughter is named after both of her nans. So Tania Rosina. So her other nan is called Rosina, which is my husband's mother. And then our youngest is named after 2 of our other nans, which is Christine and Charlotte. So yeah.
Awesome.
That's because they're girls, but boys are musician type names, which is fine. I'm okay with it now, 10 years later, that I got joked about the name.
Well, both my brother and I got named by our Irish great-grandfather who we never met because he passed away. So he's Shay, my brother, and I'm Ryan. And our middle names were chosen by our dad. And for some reason, you'd think a rugby fanatic would pick all black names, but he picked Welsh names. So I'm Gareth after Gareth Edwards, but happened to be a little prop, not a little halfback. And my brother is Carwin after, I think it might be Carwin James, and he was a fullback, if I'm not wrong. CPR, I think was his nickname. And my brother's like my dad, a massive lock. So it was like, there was a kind of.
Are you from there, or
no?
Why he chose?
No. But the Welsh rugby team of the 70s was like the All Blacks of today. When the All Blacks played them, we were really lucky to win, type thing. So maybe not lucky, but it was a really tough match. So I must ask him next time why.
Why?
Yeah,
maybe
I would have been Colin otherwise. That would have been funny.
Maybe he duped your wife. Maybe he duped your mum into naming you that. Who knows?
Yeah. So, hey, let's get on to your road trip to NASDAQ. And there are lots of elements to this because you've got this most amazing, illustrious enterprise career in the likes of Fonterra. And I think there's definitely a bank. I'm just trying to think of the word.
Bank of Queensland.
Bank of Queensland.
And Brisbane. Carter Harvey.
Harvey. So some massive companies, global work and travel, and then the startup story, which is Tania. And so, shall we share with people that first journey of, because I think part of it is while you're working in the last big gig with Fonterra, that's where it led to the creation of Tania, isn't it? So, should we start there and then bring in all the different points as they pop up through the story?
Yeah, sure. So it would have been, I'd been at Fonterra for, about 5 years. And throughout my career, I've always wanted to give back, right? So Mum and I, we would always dream about what it would be like to have enough money to buy milk and bread. And so as I've gained my education and as I've worked, I've always been thinking, am I ready now? Have I learned enough yet? Have I learned enough yet? Because I was always going to give back. And so what happened was I ended up taking on a role as a project manager. First, we did New Zealand, Australia. We improved the financial reporting from 5 days to 2 for our Australian businesses, Australia and New Zealand month-end reporting in Fonterra. And then what happened was I got given... I went on leave to have a baby. I came back and they asked me to actually run the full global improvement, which was improving our entire global reporting in Fonterra from 8 days to 3. So what happened was when we delivered that in 8 months, basically across all countries across the world, of which Fonterra was in. It was like 22,000 employees affected, 1,500 accountants, and we did that in 8 months. And so when I did that, I thought, okay, I can, maybe I know enough now. I want to give back. So then I left and started doing some consulting and contract work. And then we actually won 2 awards for that innovative reporting project. One was with NZICA back then, it was called that, and that was for the Innovation Award, and the other one was for an Internal Communications Award for PRINS. And so I had a wicked team though, so it wasn't just me. But what that did tell me was that I kind of knew some stuff, that I would be able to add value back to my own people. And so I started trying to give back. And then what happened was I found out that what I knew, like from a corporate financial accounting, financial reporting perspective, and what the smaller organizations knew, which was both Māori and non-Māori, was that there was this massive gap. And the gap in the knowledge was simply because they just didn't know it yet. It wasn't necessarily because you have to be an accountant, but you just have to know what you know. And so I started kind of repeating myself. When I was giving back, I've repeated myself 15 times. I was just like, oh my God, this just can't be the way. Like, why doesn't anyone know what these mean? But then I understood, and I understood why, because their strengths actually lie in their businesses, right? So they're either running their business or they've got a core skill set. And so numbers just aren't their thing. So then I thought, okay, well, so what can we do? I could stand up another, EY, KPMG, PwC, a big four, have a huge number of accountants. But then I knew they couldn't afford that. And so as a result of understanding that there was a big knowledge gap, not because they were unable to learn that, but because they had skills in other areas and numbers just wasn't their thing, is that I needed to somehow be able to help them bridge that gap, but at a lower cost, because they wouldn't be able to afford people upskilling them in all of those different areas day on, day out, as well as fulfilling their accounting and reporting requirements. So so then I just copied myself into Alexa. I taught myself how to code. I never want to do that again. It was painful. I want to stab my eyes out, is how I felt at the time. It took like 3 months. I learned what a CLI was. I had to build the back end of Amazon Alexa, and 2 years ago, it wasn't what it is now. And so when I built that, I then met with a chick called Larissa, who was one of the salespeople for Xero. She knew that I was passionate about giving back to Māori, my own people, and also others. And she said, and so I showed her what I'd made. We were sitting in a cafe underneath Xero headquarters in Auckland. And she said, oh my God, you've got to show Craig this. And I was like, who's Craig? And she was like, Craig Hudson. He's like the GM. I was like, oh, wicked, let's do that. So I walked upstairs, she texted him, we walked upstairs and I showed him and he was like, oh my gosh, that's such a great idea. Because it was a way to improve financial literacy, right? In a non-threatening and a really conversational way. Because when I thought about it, when they understood their financials when I spoke to them and helped them understand what it meant. And so I knew that through conversation is how they would get that knowledge. And so then, that's what I did. And so Craig was like, that's a great idea. And I said, oh, cool. Can I use RPA? Because I was an RPA program manager. Can I just strip the data off the front end? He said, oh, why don't we have a look at that? And then we went to the architect to the back end of Xero. They said, hell no. No, you're not. And I was like, damn. I said, oh, well, how am I supposed to do it? And they said, oh, you've got to use APIs. And I was like, I don't even know what an API is. What's that? So I actually did try to teach myself for 3 days how to write APIs and actually build the Xero API. I literally wanted to throw myself off a cliff after I did that. I didn't even attempt that. Well, I did attempt and it was an absolute failure. And so I connected with my French brother from another mother who was also building voice skills. He's from France. Yep. And I was writing to him, and because we're both building voice skills, I said, hey, do you know what an API is? And he goes, yeah. And I sent him the requirements from there. Can you build this? Because I have no idea of what it is. And then he came on the journey. So he was one of, there was both of us from the beginning who built Tania.ai, the prototype. Yep. And then the rest of the team members came on after that.
Oh, wow. So let's just go back a bit, because there's been so many amazing things that I've wanted to ask about. And so let's see if we can go to them in reverse. So you're talking about the fact that you were, and I think I missed this bit because I was trying to type a comment in. But the RPA, so you talked about development, then you talked about the fact about RPA when you're talking to your friend from Xero, and then Craig about the API. So what was the bit you wanted to strip out of the back of Xero that you couldn't do?
Oh, so you see, APIs are like hard integrations in a system. So you have one computer, and when you want to get data from one side to another, they use what's called APIs. And so it's like a little secret token that each computer can use, and it transfers, and it says, and you go, knock, 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 can I have your data? And, you know, the guy goes, oh, do you have the key? And he goes, yeah, I've got the key. So he gives you the key, and then you get to take the data away, right? So that's API. So RPA, which is called Robotics Process Automation, which is what I stood up for Bank of Queensland, and then came back and did that for Fonterra, is they are technical bots, which actually, rather than using API, rather than integrating hard, so you have to have a key every time you want information, it can actually do it as a human on a screen. So it operates like a human. So it's a piece of data that looks at all of the information on the screen and then picks off the data, like reads it. So I had already been trained as an RPA. Well, I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but I did do a course called for Blue Prism, RPA Foundations. I was one of 3 who got 100% in Australia. Yeah. I know, right?
100%. Can we just take a moment to? We just take a moment to say, like, 100%.
Wicked. They were even freaked out because, you know, I don't probably act like, you know, they're like,
are you a robot?
They're like, oh my God, you got 100%. I was like, why? What? Because I don't like talk like a flash guy. You don't think I've got a few clues upstairs. But yeah, so I had already built it using that. That was my strategy. And basically they said, no, I was gutted. I was so upset because I didn't know how to do it, right? I was like, I can't build that. I don't know anyone who even knows how to do that. I'm still working. I've got a family to feed. I can't even pay someone to do that. But that's when, you know, the universe rocks in and goes, don't worry about it, DonnaMaree. We're going to hook you up. And so then I met Nicholas, who's from France, who's now our head of technology.
Very cool. So I'm actually struggling to think of all the different. There's about 4 things as you went through that story that are all fabulous. I wanted to touch on, but let's just keep tracking. Let's just keep going with your story because I can always come back to it later on. They'll probably pop into my mind later as we're in the midst of something. But yes, you did teach. Oh, you did teach yourself coding. That was one of the things I wanted to come back on. So what I love about it is the fact that you're like never. So let's say, well, not never coded, but you haven't coded, and you're like, well, I'll start learning. I'll give it a go, and that's such an amazingly cool thing because one of the things I see out there a lot is this phrase, which is, what is it? I can't be what I can't see, and I go, I can't get it, but how did anyone do the first thing in the first place for you to see them to, you know? So I find it, especially when they talk about it around school kids and students, I find it really scarily self-limiting. So the fact that you just went, I needed to learn how to code, I'll give it a go. You know, boom, you got in there and did it. You might find that it feels like, you know, sticking knives in your eyes, but at least you gave it a go versus saying, oh, no one like me's done this before, so I just probably can't. You know, so I think that's one of the really inspiring points for people to take out of today's Kōrero is that you know, hoea te waka, go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's probably more about, like, I think like my mum trained me So mum couldn't read and write. Like, I freak out sometimes when I think about her. She couldn't read and write. She was on the benefit the majority of her life. There were times when she'd get like a kitchen hand job in a hotel. But I remember a lot of the time she didn't work. And that was mostly because she couldn't read and write. And I was thinking, she was pretty smart though. Like, she literally was able to train me. She trained me from very young age to know where I was going and what I was going to do. And that nothing, she basically trained me to know that nothing could stop me, right? So she didn't do it in such a way where it was from an ego place. It was more from a, don't ever let anyone say that you can't, because you can. You just have to figure out how to do that, right? And so that was essentially what she taught me to do. So in anything I do, essentially, even if I don't know what it is, I'll just be like, well, someone must know. And if someone doesn't know, then we'll need to figure it out. So I think I was trained from a very young age to think that way, which I think is why that makes a difference.
Absolutely. And you're making me reflect on my personal, so mum always taught us, if you want to do something, so what is the saying? You can do anything you want. You've just got to put your mind to it.
Yeah.
And when I did psychometric testing for the first time in my life and was like trying to how do I ace this exam and get my 100%? And they're like, just be honest, just be honest, just be honest. I got 10 out of 10 for being a generalist. And they were like, we want you to do this role, but we've actually got another role that's like this that we think you would actually be better for the company in. And I was like, oh, really? Okay. But goes back to that training of, if you want to do anything, put your mind to it. And if I look back through my history, award-winning graphic artist, art director, Michelin star, restaurant manager, you name it.
Holy.
Not quite everything, but a lot of things. I would, top it out. And then, so this thing about being taught as a kid, these messages that get installed into us, programmed into us, and look what it's helped you achieve. So.
But then when I teach my own kids, it's actually quite painful. It's quite painful because now they like have their own voices and it's coming back like 100-fold. And my friends laugh at me because they're like, oh, but they're going to be, world leaders. I'm like, oh my God, they might not survive to become a world leader.
Hey, I think that's what your mum would have said too. Every parent about every child. So, Yeah.
But I actually never. The goal was not to become this global company CEO, right? It was to become a secretary first. Then when I went to varsity, I realized that you could be other things apart from a secretary. And I'm pretty crap at being a secretary anyway. So. There were lots of things we didn't know what they were, and so as I've just progressed, then things just got. So you don't know until you just keep going, and I think it's about keeping your eyes open. And I never thought about being a CEO ever. I never thought about being a manager ever. Like I just knew that I had to keep progressing and just do well. Like just always work hard. So if I was. I think I started out in Fonterra as the continuous improvement lead for global reporting. And so I think I did that, and then I just did really well, and then I got more and more opportunities. So I think that's something that's key, is that I think when you go after something for potentially the wrong reason, I was just working hard. And with Tania.ai, it's the same thing. I know I have a goal in terms, we have like financial goals and we have long-term goals for Tania.ai, but they're all for a reason. It's not for my own personal reason, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I think it's sort of like come back to the classic Simon Sinek. Your why is not to make money, but profitability is a side effect of having a great why or purpose. Or if we were to speak in trio, we'd be talking kaupapa, if I'm not wrong. Having a
kaupapa. And so ours is always just about giving back and about ensuring that others get upskilled. And because I liken it to if you imagine you're sitting at the marae and everyone's having a kai at the table and there's people outside that aren't eating, for me, it's about making sure that everyone can sit at the table and eat at the same time, right? Not having some people eating and some people aren't. So Tania.ai is essentially trying to invoke that. Make it possible that anything can happen. I come from, and my background, I'm sure, is nothing compared to a lot of our whānau and what their lives look like, and it's not a comparison. But I think that there's lots of whānau who have taken what's happened to them and actually pushed themselves forward and used it as a momentum to move forward and get out of where they were and what things were like. And so that's probably what I strive to do and what I'm encouraging others to do and empower others to do. And don't get me wrong, Māori culture I love being Māori. It's who I am. And people call it a superpower. I don't call it a superpower because it's just the blood that runs through my veins and my tupuna around me all the time. It's not a thing. It's what I was born with, right? And it's not something I'm running from. I'm not running from being Māori. I will always be Māori. Nothing takes that away. What I am trying to strive for is that we don't have to struggle to put kai on the table because that's not who we were before we were colonised, and it's not who we should be now. But that's how it is right now.
It makes huge sense, and it sums it up beautifully. And each of those aspects, from the not seeing it as a superpower, but also the other side of it is it shouldn't be struggling for having at the table with everyone. And I look at it, right. So my wife happens to be Māori. She was approximately. That's a bit of a story, but Foxton.
Oh yeah.
Cool. So that's a bit of a story. I'll tell you that privately. Because that's her story to tell, not mine. But she was approximated at one of New Zealand's top private girls' schools and left in the sixth form and went to university. And if you want to say some of the old cliches about her intelligence level for being Māori, watch out, man, because you've got Trivial Pursuit on your ass. And the what I'm getting to is the basic fact is that we're all human.
Yeah.
Whether I'm Irish descent and Swedish descent, going way back. Chinese, Japanese, Aborigine, Māori, American, whatever. We're all human. Yeah. We all have the same capacity to be amazingly intelligent or amazingly stupid. I can be both on the same day. It's a real hangover, I think, from back 200 years ago. When and that hangover got brought forward and slowly has changed, but it's still there in parts of society. Like I was sitting, and I've told the story, and Lee Timu, who put this up before, has heard it before, but we were sitting at work drinks, and Nikki is often mistaken for being, say, Brazilian or Italian, and we were sitting at her work drinks and a table of people. She had to go to the bathroom, and there was something in the news about Māori, and her boss, who loves her, and like they're like mates, at the time, said something about, typical bloody Maoris. And I just said, mate, there's a bloody Maori sitting at this table, and you happen to love her very much, so just be careful about what you say. And he went, what, who? And I said, she happens to be at the toilet at the moment, so when she gets back, just let's not mention this again, and please, I ask you to think twice before you throw that comment out again in the future. And he went, Nikki. So he twigged my wife, his PA, and Nikki, I always said to Nikki, you're going to be the CEO of our company because you were wasted as a PA, but it was a great, she was almost like more like a general manager, but that's a whole nother story. But can
I share with you? Even though I had a degree from Waikato Uni when I was in Wellington, even other Māori thought that I was a receptionist. Like they did. I had graduated with a finance degree at Waikato Uni, like a major in finance. But it's because sometimes we do it to ourselves as Māori as well, right? And so it's more about letting it just be okay to be successful. not that I'm Māori, you know, not that you're a Pākehā guy, not that you're South African. Like, it's more about, it's bigger than that. It's just that, why can't it just be okay just to be successful regardless of the color that you are? However, I must admit that a couple of years ago, when I first started out with Tania, I finished up with Fonterra and I didn't get another role and I was doing contract work. I actually, when I used up my savings, I like, crap, babe, I'm not there yet. She's not going to make some money. We've still got a lot of work to do. I went to go and get back to get a job. And so my married name is DonnaMaree Pakinga, right? I actually put my CV out in October. And so I'd worked for global corporate organizations, you know, a National Bank of Australia. And I didn't get one call. So I got 2 degrees, undergrad and a master's in finance from Vic. Award-winning projects that I'd ran. I didn't get a phone call. I didn't get a follow-up, right? Not one for 3 months. In January, I said to him, because I'd always used DonnaMaree Ryder before I got married. And he actually said to me, I said to him, oh my God, I think it's because I'm Māori. I've got a Māori name. And he goes, yeah, it probably is, babe. You know how it is. I went, and so I was gutted. So I said, oh my God, I need to get a job. I'm going to change my name to my maiden name. And so I changed it back. And honestly, within 2 days, I got follow-up calls. Within a couple of weeks, I got job offers.
Yeah, that's.
And all I had changed on my CV was my last name. And for 3 months, no one rang. So I get that it shouldn't matter based on the color of where you're from. The problem is that there's still this huge stigma attached to Māori and whether they can add.
Keep typing this in as part of the response. But, I'm coming. Don't you worry.
Anyway, I'm just saying that I'm lucky because I had a maiden name I could go back to. What happens to Māoris out there who don't have one, a Pākehā name that they could use? And so Tania.ai is about showcasing the capability of Māori for not just ourselves, but everyone, is that we're capable, right? More than capable. But I think that it's important to showcase that on a global stage. And to build up our team within Tania.ai with all races. Because for me, it's about how, like, if you're smart or not, right? Yeah. But I encourage Māori to work hard and to kick butt.
Yeah, and you know, there are actually large numbers of very successful people who happen to be Māori. And it's the irony for me is that there are all these people out there, you know, the Syrian Taylors of the world. It's just there's a whole heap of people. I'm thinking of Renata Blair from BNZ, and the names just go rushing through my head. And still, there is this stigma, and the fact that you didn't get responses to one name, and you got responses to the other name, even with the exact same CV, and that just goes to show, you know, like what was it? Taika Waititi said in one of his speeches that New Zealand is racist as fuck, and that's really confronting. That's really confronting, and maybe people feel a bit uncomfortable about it. But it goes back to, you know, simply if I think about the example with our friend Nikki's boss, you know, he may be watching now. Oh, you've dropped off. But I'll just finish off while waiting for DonnaMaree to come back on. Hang on, looks like. Is that it's a real problem out there, and I think the words are bias and heuristics, and the third word I'll add into it is programming. You know, we receive that programming just like you did, DonnaMaree. I don't know if you can hear us from your mum around. You can do whatever you want. Don't let anyone tell you can't. You just got to work it out. But society programs us, whether it be our actual immediate family or the wider society. It's programming us as to how to perceive people. And that in large comes from the news, TV programs, and it's not just what they do show and see, but what we don't see. So one of the beautiful examples is Aquaman with Jason Momoa. the original Aquaman was a blonde-haired Pākehā, but having Jason Momoa. Hang on, let's see if we've got her there.
Oh, I'm back.
You're
Sorry.
back. That's
Yeah,
all right.
back.
So I'll just really quickly recap. I was just saying while you were having connectivity challenges there, is that you putting your CV out with your Māori name, not getting your responses for 3 months, put it out with your English name, get responses in 2 days. Is this an example of how we are? And I talked about biases, heuristics. I don't know a lot about heuristics, but the next thing I'll talk about is programming. And the example was just like your mum sort of programmed you that you can do whatever you want. Just put your that was my mum, put your mind to it. But your mum was, don't let anyone tell you, you just give it a go. We are programmed, whether it be in our immediate family or the wider society, we are programmed by what we see on the news, what we see in TV programs. So when we think about how news is reported about Māori and things like Police 10-7, and it happens to be that the majority might happen to be Māori, while that's in one angle that's correct, the background of why it's so is back to the colonisation. The reality is,
can I say something else? Is that the majority of the people that support me are Pākehā, right? Yeah. So what I mean there is a portion of New Zealand who are racist, right? There are people who don't like Māori. They think we're useless, that we're lazy, we're drug dealers, we're all crims. And there is evidence to support that, right? Yeah. There is evidence that a lot of our people, 50% of the people that are in jail right now are Māori. So it's not like people are making that judgment call based on incorrect facts. However, I don't think the majority of white New Zealand hate us. I think there are some rowdy people who don't like Māori, but throughout my entire life, the actual lady who helped my mother get us out of the hood when I was 15 years old was a Pākehā, and they owned a law company in New Plymouth. The people who have supported me throughout my university career, this chick called, she was an old lady, but Dawn and Roger Bowden, they were the ones who encouraged me to do the finance degree, although I thought Dow Jones was a guy. They encouraged me to do my master's at Victoria University and be the first Māori. And so I think there needs to be celebration for those who do support us, because I have so many who do. Like, I can name thousands of Pākehās within New Zealand globally who support me as a Māori and what I'm doing. So I don't think it's a true reflection is probably what I'm saying. It sucks because I think that's hard for Māori who have a Māori name to get in the door. I think that sucks, but that's not to say that everyone's like that.
Absolutely, and it's a very balanced, and I guess in all the discussions that I've had on this show that might be about this, we do have tended to go and focus on the problem, but not actually give airtime to the positive aspect, which is the balance, and that's actually the mistake of the traditional mainstream media. The one that I was going to repeat again, which I didn't get to Adam, is not only what we do see on the TV, but what we don't see. Yeah. The example is Aquaman, the movie with Jason Momoa. The original Aquaman is a blonde-haired white guy, but of course Jason Momoa is Hawaiian, brown skin and pretty big dude. So perfect person to play that character. This is you talk about we're talking about balance. We need to see balance. And here's one for you. Here's a question I'll throw. We watched a New Zealand made series, and it was I think it was 6 episodes, and it was it was based on a gang, Te Toki, and it was imaginary, but and it was like shit. The acting was awesome. Remember Shortland Street when it started 20, 30 years ago, and the acting was pretty average. This acting was like world class, movie stuff. But the story was about small town and the focus around the fact that focus around the gang and being basically Māori gang. And I'm like, where's the movie or the TV series about the DonnaMaree Ryder or about the Lee Kumu?
Oh God, here we go.
Where's the well, if you think about it, hang on, let me add this. as a bit of context, they've got a great TV series. I think it's called something about high school, and the guy who plays the character Curtis in Shortland Street is the kid who's the like first five. And again, it's another thing about Māori and Pacific Island kids being awesome at sport, right? And it's like, where's the story about, if I look through my LinkedIn connections, I've probably got more people with PhD on their name who are Māori and Pacific than any other ethnicity, to be honest. No bullshit. So where are these stories that are like your version? Hey, let's balance it with the positive. Where's the, So I was looking and go, if you can tell such a great story about gangs, why can't you tell such a great story about achievement and the positive
Māoris
story?
are pretty humble, right? They don't really, being showy is not really our thing. It's my thing. I don't really do showy. I more do reality than showy. Yeah. But I think it's that very humble. Like if you met my mother, she was very humble. Like she'd be so meek as to even stand up in a room and talk. But she taught me not to be. Maybe I could ask her one day when I see her again, but maybe it's because of that, not really showy and don't want to run. And the only reason I'm sharing the story about Tania.ai and our journey to the NASDAQ is because I'm over it. Like I'm over the stigma that exists for a small number of New Zealanders who think we're incapable of achieving great things except for sport, acting, and kapa haka and doing the haka. So when I was a corporate auditor at Carter Holt Harvey, I used to travel New Zealand, Aussie, and the US, right? The people who actually run the sites within New Zealand were Māori. And so if you actually look at how a Māori, like if you were to work with a Māori, they are driven, they're hardworking, and they will kick butt at what they do. Even if they're a drug dealer, they'll be the goddamn best drug dealer you've ever seen in the world. And so that is something which I think is misunderstood and misrepresented in Māoridom, is that our ability to excel, because it's part of our makeup and what drives us, is not, people don't take up the opportunity to see that. They put us in little boxes, like you can be a secretary or you can be you can work in the plant or something like that. But if you were to lift them up, they'd explode into greatness. It's just that just doesn't happen. So I got pulled up through the corporate ranks by Pākehā. And so I remember this guy going, the only way you move up the ranks is when someone pulls you up. The only way you get pulled up is when you add value and you work hard. And so I think that more of that will enable it to become normal, that we can do whatever we want and that we're not pigeonholed into these little boxes.
Yeah. Well, that's a perfect rendition or rundown of what we are trying to do here. That's what Kōrero Live is all about, is to highlight these amazing stories. So having given good airtime to a very balanced perspective on lifting Māori and also helping, what's the other side of it is enabling people to see reality. The ability for Māori to achieve in any space, not just sports or as you say, drug dealing, where I don't want to add that in. But let's look at Tania.ai, because you've got a little bit of a surprise release for us, haven't you?
Yes, we do. So as part of the journey to the NASDAQ, the key step that we were at after we went live is to determine our product market fit. Tania initially was a voice assistant. What that meant is that people would use an Alexa app on their mobile phone or an Alexa device to be able to access her. And so they'd say, open Tania, and she'd start talking and ask them some questions and then respond. What we found after we went live was that voices has adopted from a personal perspective in the US, but hadn't been adopted yet for business. In New Zealand and Australia, In Australia, 1 to 200 people know and have an Alexa. In New Zealand, 1 to 500 people know and have an Alexa. And so what we decided to do was pivot. And where we pivoted to was that today we're releasing the Tania chat. What that means, I know, it's so exciting. So what that means is that just like when people jump onto a website and they're talking to their energy provider and you see the little chat bubble at the bottom of the page and you're talking to them and they're talking back, essentially all of Tania's functionality is now available through chat, which means that everyone gets access to her. So regardless of whether you know what an Alexa is or not, our small to medium organizations that need help and understanding around their financials, they can just go onto the Tania.ai website, log into our chat, and straight away, once they've logged into their Xero account, they'll be able to start to get an update on their cash flow, performance, and balance sheet. I just love the opportunity, because when I think about when I was repeating myself 15 times and trying to help these organizations understand their financials, essentially our new Tania.ai chat enables that instantly, where anyone can get help and no one has to worry about, no one knows, I'm supposed to know my financials because no one but you knows that you're using her. No one but you knows who those financials belong to, because it's only your login that gets access. But she's able to complete it in a conversation, which makes it really easy.
Yeah, and that's Lisa Mead, who's been a guest on Yarn Live. So a couple of things. She happens to be the accountant for AFQI, so her business social
cool.
accounting.
Yay!
And her personal story is around domestic violence. So she has been writing a book about her experience, and we've had her on talking about domestic violence and how she managed to get herself out of it, because it doesn't happen for many people. There's actually a thing called beaten wife syndrome, where you don't understand why. Why do you keep going back? Why do you keep going back? Why do you keep going back? And I actually come across the potential answer is that even if it's a bad connection, humans need emotional connection, even if it's a bad one. And that might be the answer why. But thank you for being tuned in there, Lisa. And coming back to Tania.ai and chat, like when you talk about the numbers, like 1 in 500 in New Zealand and 1 in 200 in Oz have the Alexa or some sort of voice capability. And I sort of go, yeah, because I don't have one, but I know mates that have got both Google and Alexa and their whole house. Like you can talk to the house and all sorts of stuff. And I don't even have one, and I don't do anything in that space.
Yeah.
So in some areas I'm really technology advanced, and in other areas I'm really not. But am I allowed to share with everyone that I have been a beta user?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, absolutely.
So I've been a beta user, and it's good that Lisa's here because she can add in the comments and tell people.
You can talk to him now, Lisa, about what you want him to do.
Yeah, the pain that she has experienced with me and my business and my lack of accounting. But even like when I did the chat, and my suggestion back to you was, I don't even know what these things are. Like you're saying, Tania was saying, do you want this, and this? Or your this is this amount, and your this is that amount. I'm like, what is that? And that's why I said to you, like, wow, this is kind of cool. Like, can I, in the future, can I click on that and get like a definition or an explanation? And there's Lisa going, ha, 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 ha.
Yeah, because the problem is there's nothing wrong with you, right?
Just not my background.
And that's what me and my team know, is it's not you. It's just that you don't know what you don't know. Yeah. And the cool thing about the Tania.ai chat is that it's now on a channel that everyone's used to. So transitioning to her and starting to upskill from a financial literacy perspective is a lot easier. But also over the next month, what we're dedicated to doing is getting on as many small to medium organizations as possible before Christmas. We're actually saying that the rest of 2021 is on us. And so anyone who comes onto our chat, onto our Tania.ai website, they're able to get Tania free for the rest of the year. And so they won't be charged anything until next year. One, because it sucks right now for businesses, especially small to medium businesses. But secondly, that we want to refine her and make her, into the full piece of tech that she needs to be, that you are able to improve and grow your business. Because if she's not doing that, then she's not doing her job. And so as much as attached I am to the kaupapa and the vision of Tania, as a team, unless she's going to be adding value, then we need to refine her. So over the next month, as people come onto our beta version, they did say, I remember someone said, you're supposed to release it when she's only 20% done, because that's what Google does. I was like 20% working? Like, what does that do? And they were like, yeah, Google and Apple, they always release everything and things don't even work. And I was like, oh, I don't know. So she's probably more like 80, 90% working. I couldn't quite drop to the 20%. But yeah, basically the rest of 2021's on us. We want you to find out where things are at. We want you to be able to work closely with your accountant to be able to improve and grow things. And we're really excited about our new channel and how people can use her.
Well, that is absolutely brilliant thinking, because my background is in software and technology, sales and marketing, and that your user feedback is all important. What you will be able to glean from the growth of users through this period, and I guess during the quiet time is a great time to be able to put it into use and understand it, because when it's the busy time of the year, you're trying to keep so many balls juggled in the air, which means you can come out into 2021 with a whole bunch of, I guess, the crinkles ironed out and lessons learned and things. And I remember one of the companies I work with, they had so they built their own software for themselves as well as building bespoke software. So kind of like you doing your contracting to help build Tania.ai. They used to build software for other companies and build their own software. And in their own software, they would have various analytics, but I think they had a Google Analytics for every event, every function. And they would religiously look through for bottlenecks and problems in the stats, but also they had the ability, they popped up this window that said, hey, if you're stuck on this, drop us a line. So they got the user base really well trained in dropping a line going, I'm stuck at this, it doesn't work, and I'm going to pop out. So the stats would give them the quantifiables and then the emails or whatever off the chat function would give them the
usability, like the stats.
You got the financial masters. You tell me.
I'm
an artist. I don't know my numbers.
I mean, essentially, one's qualitative and quantitative, right? So, how much is it being used versus what actually do they need within it? And so, essentially, how we see Tania.ai moving into the future is right now. So, we've created a voice assistant. And our voice assistant is still available, because in about 4 years' time, everyone will be talking to their laptops and talking to their phones. It may not feel like normal now. They may not have assistants, but as we get more smart devices into New Zealand and into Australia, we won't want to push the button. Just like when we got the remote for the TV, the same thing will be for lights, your stove, your jug, your toaster, everything. You'll want to just use your voice. And so now just Tania is available on both channels. And so what we see is a transition from where we are now, which is the beginning of that chat, through to eventually voice in about 4 to 5 years' time. The other cool thing that we're releasing next year, which I don't mind sharing here, is that the live integration of Tania with her accountant. So Lisa, so basically Tania will... Awesome. So basically what would happen is that Tania would manage the initial conversation, bring the clients up to speed on where things are at. So this is where your cash flow is at. This is where your P&L, your receivables, payables, etc. Then what happens is, as she's going through that, where she finds that there are some red flags, you're going into overdraft, your debt to equity ratio is getting high. You've gone and ticked up too much stuff. Your expenses are going over budget. You're not going to hit budget for sales. Then what she'll do is she'll offer you the opportunity to speak with your accountant directly. Now, depending on whether that accountant is available at the time, we'll either raise a ticket for their team to come back to you, or you can start talking to them live.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So
that moves the whole accounting industry into a more user service.
Yes. So if I think about it, like Lisa's built up a really good company with a large number of clients, and has the tiers. So I'm just about to go to the next tier and invest more money. So I'm on the basic tier and invest to the advisory level, because I have been running AFQY for 13 years without a plan or a strategy written down.
Yeah.
So imagine what I could do if I actually have some real focus. So Lisa's just doing the budget at the moment in terms of pulling down what the average costs are and all the rest of it. And we're going to look through it and go, what do I really need to pay for Netflix? that's a company. Yeah. But then also, the stuff that you'll probably be quite aware of, and everybody does, which is, where's the money going to come from, and where's it going to come from in each month and each quarter and all the rest of it, i.e. what product lines, etc. And therefore that's going to map to the marketing and the action, because if not, I run off like a crazy care looking at shiny things everywhere, right?
Yeah.
So to have the system actually send all these different specific alerts for important things, then it's like, I think it's where everything's going, right? Like, so my wife has been through a lot of medical procedures, and through my lesson as a primary carer, I go, there's no way in hell that a doctor can remember or know everything in the 25 billion textbooks, but we have the training and capability to be the doctor, but every now and then they need the support. So think of, so for example, she had a DVT because she has Mayer-Thurner syndrome, which is your artery wraps around your vein, and that's what caused the clot. And she was misdiagnosed for 5 years. Sorry, 3.5 years. And the doctor that was meant to do the scan on her this time, because the pain was coming back from another DVT, he was sick, so the boss took over. And when we walked in, he was like, so he scanned her and he went, did you walk in here in those high heels? And we're like, yeah. She goes, how many painkillers you on? She's like, like 10 milligrams of tramadol. He's like, what? Not even 150? He's like, yeah, what's going on, dude? He's like, you've got Mayer-Thurner syndrome. You're the second person in New Zealand to be diagnosed with it, and I diagnosed the first person 20 years ago. It's a 1 in like 5 million or 10 million. So a lot of us will have arteries that cross.
Yeah.
But it's very rare to have the artery wrap around the vein. So if you think about it, imagine a scan goes through the computer, and they're doing it now with AI, where it's actually one of the biggest ones is mammograms and reading for breast cancer. So doctors can't even see some of the cancer, but the computer can pick it up and gets it much earlier. So this is the combination where, if you think of your RPA, robotic process automation, and around robots taking over the world, well, I think it'll be robots and humans making the world a better place for humans.
Well, it enables us to be smarter. That's what AI and bots do. So it enables us to reach our full capacity as humans. We're a lot more complicated. We have a lot more value to add than what a bot does. The automation side of AI, yes, but you remember AI is artificial intelligence. A person built that AI robot. Like that robot was built based on a person's thinking. But the cool thing about people is that we're awesome problem solvers. We can problem solve instantly. Yes, you can build an algorithm that solves very quickly, but you have to have all of the data sets available to the bot, right? And you have to be able to then know how to analyze that data. The cool thing about humans is that we learn a lot quicker than a bot does. And then when we retain that, we can use the full suite of our entire lives to make decisions, whereas they build and they make a decision based on whatever they've been told and what they have access to. But I really encourage people to move into that whole creative side, that whole problem solving side, that whole connection side, because the bots will come and do all of the admin work. So anything that's basically admin. But for example, for accountants, what the bot can't do is look at her face. Eventually will, but look at her face and be like, oh, she looks like she's been crying. Did something happen personally? That's why her business isn't going well this week. So there's like 1,000 variables that an accountant has to take into consideration when determining exactly what you should do next with your business. And so the cool thing about Tania is that she partners with the accountant. So we release the lower level stuff from them, right? And then they get to do all the cooler problem solving stuff where we actually need the accountants to sit, because that's what changes a business. The ability to fix what's wrong and then the ability to grow is something that they should be focused on with their accountants. The whole updating, the whole where am I at? But the key thing I want to say here is that unless a person like you understands where you're at, it makes it difficult for an accountant to work with you. Because if you don't really understand, then they're sitting there trying to convince you what they already knew 3 weeks ago, or it can be determined as not listening to your accountant. And then you're like, oh, the accountant sucks anyway. What does she know? What does he know? But, and so Tania tries to bridge the two so that it becomes this more powerful conversation that you can have.
Got you. Well, look, that is a beautiful place to raise that we're on an hour for our half-hour show. And I'm just thinking, I wasn't actually worried about talking much longer, but I was more worried about, I think, is it
the kids.
2-year-old and 14-year-old? Yeah, 14-year-old.
Well, it is. I've given till 3 o'clock. Yeah. She'll be like, are you done yet, Mum? Are you done? Yeah, well,
Hey, shall we wrap up here and let's say, give us your closing remarks, and let's ask you for something that touches on Tania.ai I, that touches also on New Zealand, and I'm not quite sure what to label it as, but or how to shape it up. But the New Zealand picture for Māori and lifting Māori up, opening Māori up to enjoy the benefits of them as a human. And maybe the last thing about the team.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I haven't spoken about my Wicked as team yet. In terms of our vision for Tania, I think that is an area that actually embodies all of those. So the one is about, uplifting our small to medium organisations and businesses, including Māori trusts and organisations across New Zealand. 95% of New Zealand business is actually made up of small to medium organisations. So it's critical that we ensure that they have the knowledge and understanding they need to have sustainable organisations going forward. COVID does not help, but even when COVID starts to kick back and we get into the new year, our small to medium organisations, everyone's trying to run around and throw things at them, but we need to strengthen their understanding so that they can make really good decisions that helps them grow their business. They can employ more people or employ back the people that they had to let go, because they look after the families of New Zealand. Those 95% of the organisations in New Zealand look after the families of New Zealand. And then if we move into the whole dimension around being Māori, what does success look like? For me, Tania.ai is not saying I want every Māori within New Zealand to now stand up their own global organisation. But the point of what I'm trying to achieve and what me and my team are trying to achieve is that it shouldn't matter that you're Māori. It shouldn't matter if you come from a low socioeconomic background, that if you want to achieve something, you can. So if you want to be the chef of your own restaurant, then be the chef. If you want to cycle for New Zealand in the Olympics, cycle for New Zealand, or become a famous basketball player, run your own law firm. So it doesn't have to be commercial. All I'm saying is do what you love and do it so well that you're able to look after your family and not have to struggle. So that's my kind of key drive and our key drive around Tania.ai. And then if we look at just Tania.ai as an organisation, if we look at my team, in my team, what we're dedicated to, can you help us, please? It's my son. He's waiting for me to buy him some coins on his game. Hop off this. So, and he's like, it's 3 o'clock. I need my coins.
Yeah. Well, at least they're punctual. 3
o'clock. Got one more. Is in terms of Tania.ai, yes, it's about growing prosperity within New Zealand, within our SMEs. It's also showing what New Zealand's capable of. My team is so smart, and they've worked so hard I look forward to seeing the roles that they're going to take as we scale globally, and the impact that that has on their family, and that filters down. 80% of my team at the moment are Māori, and so I'm hugely excited about what that means for us and what that means for us going forward. I want to do like education programs, and I want to be able to, there's so many things we want to be able to do with the money that Tania.ai will make. So it's looking like a rosy future. Anything's possible, basically.
Karawai. That sounds pretty cool to me. And it won't hold you up from the kids, because you did say 3 o'clock and we're 6 minutes over, so you'll be in the penalty box. You're like, no, we want extra chocolate sauce on our ice cream tonight. But I just want to say thank you so much, and I always get this a little bit tongue twister, but tēnā rawa atu koe, which is thank you very much in te reo Māori. One of my favorite phrases, because I say thank you very much all the time. So, and what an amazing story. So from here, I'll get some comments tidied up and all the rest of it, but hopefully we can get you to sometime later tonight, when you get a moment, or whenever works, to come in and add a comment to the post. Sure. And we'll start getting it shared around, and I've got to get a few things tied up, but don't you worry about that. We'll get there. And thank you so much for sharing the release of the new feature, the chat feature, which I'm using, and the fact that people can access it free until 2022. So what we want to do is encourage as many small business owners as possible to do what I have done. Sign up. It's if I can say it in my words, piece of piss, mate. Click here, click there, and sign in with your Xero credentials, and then just start pressing yes, main menu, cash flow report, and it gives you all this stuff. You'll probably have a lot of questions like I did, but that's part of what's going to happen, is the education. So Lisa, here I come with a bunch of questions, and I look forward to seeing them develop more and more and more and more, and educate me more and more, because I personally feel, this is my closing remark, I personally feel if I knew more about accounting and economy and stuff, I could do a much better job of running my business. I'm forever pestering Lisa with really inane, stupid questions that she answers patiently and beautifully. But just imagine what I could do with my business if I actually had a better handle on this stuff. So
you have a foundational knowledge, right?
Yeah.
And so that enables her to work with something, Lisa.
Yeah, that'll we can run faster together if I could actually run. Yeah.
Hey, Ryan, I just want to say thank you for the opportunity. There's a couple of things. One is I love how you embrace our te reo Māori. And as more and more people like you do that, it makes it normal, and it makes it okay for that to be how it looks. Within my contracting role, I hear them, they rock on and they're like, tēnā koutou katoa, or they're like, kia ora koutou. And I love how it's becoming normality, because knowing another language doesn't disempower you. It actually builds your spirit to be greater. So I appreciate you for that. Secondly, I appreciate you for the time that you've taken today. I know we've gone over, but I appreciate your support around Tania.ai for enabling me to share this time with you, to talk about her, talk about my thoughts about things, and the backstory. I really appreciate, I really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. And thank you so much for sharing those thanks. It's quite humbling, and appreciate it. So you
onto the NASDAQ we go.
On the NASDAQ we go, and I've got the party on the back.
Yeah. I'll have to get you some food. We'll do a pit stop soon.
Yeah. So space and champagne, eating's cheating. Let's go.
Yeah. Crack up. Okay.
Right, thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Ryan.